So I want you to just picture the scene for a second. The stage is bathed in this really stark, unforgiving light.
Oh yeah, that intense broadcast lighting where you can't hide anything.
Exactly. And you've got a 21-year-old singer standing completely alone before a panel of, legendary international producers and artists.
The absolute titans of the South Korean music industry.
Right. These are people who have seen every meticulously manufactured pop idol, every seasoned veteran, every flash-in-the-pan viral sensation walk through their studio days.
We've literally seen it all.
And the singer standing there, she knows that her entire career, basically every massive sacrifice she's made moving across the continent, it all hinges on a single vocal transition.
And she doesn't have a backing track to hide behind either.
None. No dancers to distract the eye, just no safety net whatsoever. There is just this overwhelming pressurized silence in the room, a microphone, and her raw talent.
It gives you chills just thinking about the sheer pressure of that moment.
It really does. And then we watch her open her mouth, and she flawlessly flips languages, genres, and honestly, all expectations. She delivers a performance so seemingly effortless, so perfectly controlled, that we all instantly assume it's pure organic magic.
Right. We immediately default to calling it natural talent. Like she was just born doing this.
Exactly. But what if we're completely wrong about that? What if that effortlessness we're all so quick to praise is actually the result of extreme anatomical adaptation?
Oh, I like where this is going.
What if it requires intense psychological conditioning, the staggering cross-cultural leap of faith, and an understanding of vocal mechanics that basically borders on the strictly scientific?
Well, it's the ultimate illusion of mastery, isn't it? When someone is truly operating at the absolute pinnacle of their craft, they make the impossible look like a casual Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, they make it look like they're just breathing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the scaffolding, holding that performance together, the sheer mechanics of it is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And usually, it's completely invisible to the audience. We just see the magic.
Which is exactly what we're unpacking today. So welcome to Future_Music Deep Dive.
We are so incredibly hyped for this one.
We really are. I'm so glad you're joining us for this deep dive because today we are focusing on a truly fascinating piece of source material. We are looking at episode 96 of Throga Vocal Gym.
Such a good channel.
It's an incredible interview and live reaction show hosted by vocal experts Richard Fink IV and songwriter Johnny Cummings. And their guest is the rising Filipino-Korean star, Gwyn Dorado.
And we are going to completely deconstruct the actual physical mechanics of Gwyn's explosive success today.
Right, because we aren't just talking about the aesthetic of how she sings or like how cool the performance looked. We are getting into the literal vocal science.
The heavy lifting underneath the hood.
Yeah, we're looking at the profound physical challenges she's had to overcome, including, by the way, a bombshell revelation about unilateral deafness, which we will definitely get to.
That part absolutely blew my mind.
Same. And we'll also cover her incredibly rigorous approach to surviving and, honestly, thriving in the intensely competitive South Korean music television landscape.
And we should definitely clarify right out of the gate for you listening, this isn't a standard pop culture recap or some superficial fan reaction.
Not at all.
The Throga hosts provide this highly unique, deeply technical lens that elevates this entire conversation into a literal masterclass in vocal science and artistic discipline.
Yeah, because Richard's background is all in vocal mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. He focuses specifically on vocal health, longevity, and physiology. And when you combine that with Johnny's incredible ear for songwriting, harmonic structure, and artistic intent, it gives us the absolute perfect framework to analyze this.
It helps us understand why Gwyn Dorado isn't just another viral sensation on a reality show. She's a fascinating case study in human potential and, surprisingly, auditory processing.
But wait, before we get into the actual mechanics of all that, we have to share a quick story with you, the listener.
Oh my gosh, yes. We have to talk about the live stream.
Because we actually experienced this source material in real time. We were literally tuned into the Throga live stream the exact moment it was happening.
We were absolutely glued to our screens. I don't think either of us blinked for the first 20 minutes of that broadcast.
We definitely didn't. The energy in that live chat was just so infectious.
It was crazy. And we got so caught up in the hype of seeing Gwyn get this level of professional, granular praise from these international experts that we actually sent sent a super chat directly to the stream.
I still can't believe we did that, but it felt so necessary in the moment.
It really did. I remember furiously typing out, Gwyn Dorado is definitely a vocal shapeshifter with limitless genre possibilities.
And then seeing that pop up on the screen and hearing Richard and Johnny actually acknowledge it live, I mean, that felt like the ultimate validation of everything we'd love to analyze on this show.
It was amazing. It was this perfect merging of the fandom's passion with genuine, high-level technical analysis.
It was such a great moment. So a massive shout out to Throga channel hosts Richard and Johnny. Love this duo.
Absolutely love them.
Their chemistry, the way they balance the really nerdy technical breakdowns with this genuine, joyful appreciation for the artistry, it makes them the perfect team for this kind of interview.
Right. They managed to pull back the curtain on aspects of her artistry that most interviewers wouldn't even know to ask about because they know what to listen for.
So let's unpack this. The deep dive kicks off with Richard and Johnny reacting to Gwyn's performance of the song Rebirth from the survival show Sing Again 4.
Oh man, Rebirth.
Right out of the gate, Gwyn just completely flips the script. Rebirth is originally this classic, somewhat serious, beloved track by Yoon Jong-shin.
And Yoon Jong-shin, by the way, for those who don't know, is a legendary figure in Korean music, and he was sitting right there on the panel as a judge.
Literally staring right at her.
Yeah.
And you can see on the broadcast, the judges were noticeably skeptical of her arrangement initially.
Oh, you can totally see the hesitation on their faces.
Yeah. Because it takes a monumental amount of courage to take a revered classic, stand 10 feet away from the original composer, and essentially say, I am going to completely dismantle your beloved song and rebuild it in my own image.
Yeah, most contestants in survival shows, they just try to pay homage. They play it safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she opted for total reconstruction.
And rebuild it she did. I mean, she shocked the entire room by opening the performance with a free-form, tempo-less, vocal-only intro.
The audacity of that.
Right. She just left the audience and the judges completely hanging in the air, leaning forward in their seats before she finally dropped the arrangement into this slinky, almost Diana Krall's-esque jazz and R&B groove.
See, the musical audacity of that tempo-less intro, it really can't be overstated. Because if you look at music theory, tempo and rhythm act as the ground beneath the listener's feet.
That's what we latch onto.
Right. It's the grid that makes us feel safe and oriented.
Right.
When you completely remove that rhythmic grid, you induce a state of basically auditory vertigo in your audience.
Oh, auditory vertigo. I like that.
They have absolutely nothing to hold on to except the singer's tone, pitch, and phrasing. So it demands absolute perfection.
Because there's no band covering up your mistakes?
Exactly. Every microscopic flaw, every slight waver in pitch, any accidental breathiness, it is magnified 1,000 times over in that total silence. She didn't just sing the notes. She actively dictated the atmospheric pressure of the entire room.
That is such a good way to put it. And that leads perfectly into what Johnny Cummings was obsessing over during their reaction. He described her voice as having an expensive tone.
Expensive tone. Such a great phrase.
It is. I absolutely love that phrase, but I want to dig into it from the vocal mechanics side. Like, what makes a tone expensive from a mechanical, physiological standpoint?
Right, because it's not just a vibe, it's a technique.
Exactly. Richard and Johnny zero in on her ability to keep the lid on. They point out that she's actively, intentionally restraining her dynamics. She's idling the engine rather than belting at level 10 the entire time.
So what does it actually mean for her vocal cords?
Well, if we look at the physics of vocal science, keeping the lid on is a masterclass in subglottic pressure management.
Okay, break that down for us. Subglottic pressure.
Right, so the glottis is the space between your vocal folds. Subglottic pressure is the air pressure building up from your lungs right below those folds.
Got it.
When amateur singers want to project a sense of intensity or deep emotion, their first instinct is simply to push more air. They just sing louder, they blast air through the vocal cords.
Which usually sounds kind of shouty, right?
Exactly. Because forcing that massive volume of air through the vocal folds often thins out the resonance. It can cause the larynx to raise excessively, which basically creates a harsh, strained, brassy sound.
Which, to Johnny's point, sounds cheap.
Yes. It sounds cheap because it sounds out of control. An expensive tone comes from maintaining maximum acoustic space in the vocal tract. You have to keep the larynx relaxed and low. You actively lift the soft palate to create internal volume while simultaneously holding back the sheer volume of air pressing against the folds.
So you're creating a larger chamber for the sound to echo in, but you aren't blasting it with air.
Exactly. It creates this compressed, incredibly dense sound. It feels super intimate, but you can sense the massive latent power behind it.
It really is the illusion of proximity. She sounds like she's whispering directly into your ear, but with the acoustic resonance of a cathedral.
Yes. It makes me think of driving a high-performance sports car, like a Ferrari or something, through a really quiet suburban neighborhood.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right, because you know there's a monstrous 800 horsepower engine under the hood. The car is easily capable of going 200 miles an hour. But the actual skill, the real demonstration of elite engineering and the driver's control, is in the smooth, quiet purr as it rolls at 20 miles an hour.
Without stalling or jerking or sputtering all over the place.
Exactly. The power isn't in the roaring exhaust. The power is in the restraint. You can feel the horsepower even when it's just idling.
That's a fantastic way to visualize it. And the Throga hosts actually highlight a very specific musical moment in this performance that proves this level of control.
The C5.
Yes, the C5.
Yeah.
They note that during this rebirth performance, she hits a C5 note. Now, mathematically, a C5 is exactly 523.25 hertz. It sits firmly in the upper register for a female vocalist.
It's a high note, for sure.
And Richard points out that she hit this exact C5 note 6 or 7 different times throughout the arrangement. But every single time she landed on that 523 hertz frequency, she colored it with a completely different tone, a different dynamic, and a completely different emotional intent.
You want to push on this a bit because I think to a casual listener, hitting the same note a bunch of times doesn't immediately sound like a magic trick. Like, shouldn't a professional singer be able to make a note sound however they want?
You'd think so, right? But it comes down to the totally unforgiving physics of the vocal folds. At 523 vibrations per second, the physical tissue of the vocal folds is stretched very thin and very taut.
Like a rubber band pulled tight.
Exactly. And because it's so tight, it wants to behave in very binary, predictable ways. Typically, a female singer approaching that specific pitch will feel a physiological break. They either have to flip entirely into a light, airy head voice.
Which can sometimes lack emotional punch or presence, right?
Right, because it's a bit thin. Or their other option is to rely on a thick, aggressive chest voice, pulling a lot of vocal mass all the way up to that pitch, which is essentially belting.
Which is exhausting.
Very. Those are the two default physiological settings for that frequency. So to sit right on that exact C5 and consciously decide, I'm going to make this first one sound breathy and vulnerable, and then a minute later decide I'm going to make this exact same pitch sound rich, brassy, and authoritative, that requires supreme microscopic physical coordination.
She's essentially refusing the default settings of her own anatomy.
Precisely. She's navigating what vocal coaches call the mix or the passaggio with surgical precision to maintain the overtones.
And overtones are those harmonic frequencies that sit above the fundamental pitch, right? The ones that give the voice its unique color.
Exactly. To maintain those overtones without straining means she has completely isolated the muscles that control pitch, which is the cricothyroid muscle, from the muscles that shape the vocal tract.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
It's acoustic gymnastics performed so smoothly, you don't even realize how dangerous the routine is.
And keeping that vocal health intact despite the demanding, relentless schedules of Korean television, I mean, that is a huge testament to the Throga Vocal Gym approach that Richard champions.
Absolutely. You don't get that kind of consistency without treating the voice like a finely tuned muscle group.
But here's where the narrative of this deep dive takes a massive, massive turn.
Oh, yeah. The bomb show.
Right. Because you have to ask, how does a singer develop such microscopic, precise control over their pitch and tone? You'd naturally assume it's just endless scales and having perfect, pristine, natural hearing.
That would be the logical assumption.
But surprisingly for Gwyn, it might have everything to do with the profound physical anomaly in how she actually processes sound.
This was the absolute bombshell of the interview. I mean, it completely shifted the paradigm of how we understand her musicality.
It really did. Mid-conversation, totally unprompted, Gwyn casually drops the fact that she is completely deaf in her right ear.
She just tossed it out there as if she were talking about being left-handed.
I know. She reveals she was born with microtia, which is a congenital condition that affects the development of the outer and middle ear, leaving her totally deaf on the right side.
And she even underwent 2 failed reconstructive surgeries before she moved to Korea to try and correct it.
Right. And then, in this incredibly serendipitous, almost cinematic moment during the live stream, Throga host Richard Fink reveals that he was actually born without an eardrum in one ear.
He literally calls them twinsies.
He did. The statistical unlikelihood of having two people with such a specific, rare auditory experience sitting across from each other, discussing high-level vocal mechanics is just staggering.
It really gave Richard the perfect opening to break down the science of bone conduction, which I found so fascinating. He uses it to explain why basically every single human being on Earth hates hearing their own recorded voice.
Oh my gosh, it is a universal trauma. We hear a playback of ourselves and immediately think, who is that nasal imposter and why are they using my words?
Exactly. We all hate it. But Richard breaks down the actual mechanics of why that happens. When you speak or sing, the vibration doesn't just exit your mouth and travel through the air to your ear canal.
Right, because a massive amount of the acoustic vibration travels internally.
Yes. It moves through your jawbone, your cartilage, and your muscular tissue directly to your inner ear, specifically the cochlea.
And because bone and dense tissue are much better conductors of low frequencies than air is, you're constantly hearing this rich, bass-boosted, incredibly warm version of your own voice resonating inside your skull.
And the crazy thing is, no microphone on Earth and no external listener will ever capture or hear that exact internal resonance. You are literally the only person who hears that version of your voice.
Which is why the recording always sounds thin and nasal to us. It's missing all that internal bass.
Exactly. And this leads Richard to a really incredibly compelling hypothesis regarding Gwyn's unilateral deafness.
The monolithic hearing theory.
Right. He theorizes about what he calls monolithic or monophonic hearing. Because Gwyn is entirely deaf in her right ear, she completely lacks a stereo field.
Okay, so her brain processes incoming sound fundamentally differently than someone with typical binaural or two-ear hearing. Okay, wait. I struggle to buy that completely. I have to push back here a little bit.
Push back, let's hear it.
Are we really saying that losing half of your hearing capacity actually makes you better at processing pitch? Like, how does a sensory deficit become an evolutionary advantage in music, of all things? It sounds a bit like a comic book origin story where the blind superhero gets super hearing.
I totally understand the skepticism, I really do.
Yeah.
But there is hard neuroscience backing this up. Let's look at Richard's theory. When you have standard binaural hearing, your brain is constantly expending a massive amount of neurological energy processing spatial data.
Like tracking where sounds are coming from.
Exactly. If a snare drum hits, the sound wave reaches your left ear a fraction of a millisecond before it reaches your right ear.
Because of the physical distance between your ears.
Right, and your auditory cortex is constantly, subconsciously calculating those tiny microsecond delays, along with slight volume differences, to figure out exactly where that sound is coming from in a three-dimensional space. It is a relentless, massive processing load on the brain.
So our brains are essentially constantly running a complex 3D rendering program in the background just to navigate the world.
Exactly. And because Gwyn doesn't have that stereospatial processing to manage, she isn't distracted by the where of the sound.
Oh, what?
Right. Her brain can dedicate an extraordinary amount of its processing power purely to the what. She perceives the audio spectrum with an incredibly unique clarity. For her, sound isn't this complex, echoing 3D map. It's a highly focused, flat audio plane consisting purely of varying decibel levels and frequencies.
That perfectly aligns with the analogy Richard provided in the interview. He compared it to covering one eye. If you put an eye patch on, the world doesn't suddenly go out of focus, right?
No, it doesn't get blurry at all.
You just lose your depth perception. Your focal clarity remains absolute and maybe even feels sharper because you aren't expending energy calculating depth.
Exactly.
So does this focused, flat, monophonic audio plane allow Gwyn to lock into that tiny, precise window of frequency that Johnny and Richard were praising earlier?
It is highly probable. I mean, the human brain is remarkably neuroplastic. When it's deprived of sensory input in one area, it aggressively rewires itself to compensate.
It adapts to survive.
Right. So Richard speculates that over the course of her life, her left ear, or more accurately, the auditory cortex associated with her left ear, was forced to become hypersensitive. Because all auditory data had to funnel through a single channel, she likely developed the ability to hear and distinguish microfrequencies that might just blur together for someone expending energy on spatial awareness.
So she's forced to rely entirely on the pure, unadulterated pitch.
Exactly.
So when she's up there on stage shaping that 523 hertz C5 note 6 different ways, her brain is analyzing that exact frequency with the precision of a laser, completely undiluted by the acoustic reflections of the room or stereo distractions.
It's honestly incredible. It reframes her entire vocal precision.
Yeah.
It's not just the result of practice, it's a profound physiological adaptation.
It's adaptation born of necessity. And what's truly poetic about this, I think, is that this physical adaptability, this literal rewiring of her sensory processing, it mirrors something else entirely. Her geographic and linguistic adaptability. Because if her brain had to completely rewire how she physically hears the world, it absolutely had to rewire how she physically speaks and sings when she moved countries.
Oh, absolutely. The linguistic pivot she pulled off is just as staggering as the physical one.
Yeah.
We really need to set the stage for this.
Yeah, let's talk about the move to Korea.
Gwyn moved to South Korea just 2 years ago, and she moved there with zero knowledge of the Korean language. Nothing.
Which is so brave.
It's wild. She was driven by this intense love of K-dramas that she developed during the pandemic lockdowns.
Right.
She simply decided she wanted to sing original soundtracks, OSTs, for these dramas. So she just packs up her life and goes.
And shortly after, she ends up competing on Sing Again 4 as the absolute only foreign contestant on the entire show.
The sheer unadulterated audacity of entering a national televised singing competition in a language you literally do not speak is staggering. I mean, the cognitive load of just existing in that environment, let alone performing at an elite level, is immense.
The learning curve she describes is exacting. She talks about her initial backstage interviews during the early rounds of the show. She said a basic interview meant for just 5 simple questions would take an hour to film.
An hour for 5 questions?
Yes, because the producers would ask her something standard, like, how she felt about the judges' critiques, and she had to survive by begging the coordinators to give her the questions in advance.
She was just trying to survive the shoot.
She would write out massive scripts, phonetically mapping out her answers syllable by syllable, just to get through a basic conversation on camera without breaking down.
It's such a high-stakes, pressure cooker environment. But what's fascinating is the result of that extreme linguistic submersion. By the time she reached the finals, her Korean had become so fluent that those same backstage interviews only took 15 minutes.
That is an accelerated learning curve driven by sheer survival instinct and total immersion.
But here's the thing. Speaking a language in an interview is one thing. Singing in it, manipulating the vowels across different pitches and dynamics, is an entirely different beast.
It really is, and Gwyn explains the physical mechanical difference between singing in Korean versus singing in her native English. And this actually blew my mind because I never thought about languages having physical locations in the mouth.
It's so interesting.
She describes Korean as requiring a very forward placement of sound, whereas English sits much further backward.
Yeah, this is a crucial foundational concept in vocal pedagogy. The placement of a sound refers to where the singer physically feels the sympathetic resonance vibrating in their face and throat.
So like where the sound is buzzing.
Exactly. The Korean language phonetically utilizes a lot of bright forward vowels and consonants that naturally resonate in the mask of the face. We're talking about the cheekbones, the nasal cavity, right behind the teeth and lips.
And English is different.
Very. American English, on the other hand, is generally a very guttural, lazy language phonetically. We tend to swallow our vowels. The sound resonates much further back in the pharynx, down towards the soft palate and the back of the tongue.
And the Throga hosts explore the danger of this dynamic. Richard dives into this push and pull mechanism. He explains that if a singer tries to sing entirely forward all the time, which the Korean language naturally demands if you want to sound authentic, it can be incredibly fatiguing on the vocal folds.
Because you're constantly pushing the acoustic energy out.
Right, because you're maintaining constant muscular tension to keep that acoustic energy focused right at the front of the lips. If you don't balance it, you burn out the voice quickly. It's exhausting.
So Gwyn had to actively learn to balance the forward, bright placement of her newly adopted language with the backward, relaxed, warmer placement of her native English.
She consciously navigates this push and pull, syllable by syllable, to maintain her vocal health while singing in Korean.
And doing that requires immense conscious control. I really want you to imagine the cognitive load we're talking about here.
Seriously, think about this for a second. Imagine trying to learn a brand new complex language while simultaneously trying to win a national TV talent show in a foreign country, while also fundamentally altering the physical mechanics of your vocal tract mid-song so you don't destroy your vocal cords.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. I have to ask you, from an artistic standpoint, is the physical toll of changing your vocal placement mid-song akin to a professional golfer trying to completely switch their swing mechanics in the middle of the Masters tournament?
That is a very accurate comparison. A professional golf swing relies on deeply ingrained subconscious muscle memory. If you stand over the ball and suddenly start thinking about the exact angle of your left wrist or the pivot of your hips during the downswing, you will completely shank the ball.
Because you're thinking too much.
Exactly. The conscious analytical mind interferes with the smooth execution of the subconscious. For a singer, changing placement mid-phrase is just as perilous. If you focus too much on funneling the resonance forward for a specific Korean vowel, you might lose the emotional connection to the lyric. Or worse, you might accidentally sharpen the pitch because your larynx raised while you were pushing the sound forward.
It's a highly delicate, precarious balancing act.
Richard actually shared an illustrative anecdote about this exact phenomenon during their reaction. He was working as a vocal coach with a singer from Utah.
Oh, right, the Utah singer.
Yeah, this singer had a beautiful, rich voice, but the sound was completely trapped in the back of his throat. Very typical for an American English speaker.
The lazy swallowed vowels.
Exactly. Richard had to explain the concept of funneling and physically shaping the internal frequencies to bring the sound out of the back of the throat and project it forward into the mask.
It's a profound physical recalibration. And for Gwyn, blending these two placements, the forward Korean mask and the backward English depth, creates a highly unique vocal signature.
It really does. It allows her to inject warmth, depth, and resonance into a language that naturally sits very bright.
That hybrid placement is a massive part of what makes her sound so distinctive and appealing to Korean audiences, right? She doesn't sound like a native Korean singer, but she also doesn't sound like a foreigner struggling with the language.
She essentially created a third sound.
Which brings to mind a cultural concept that perfectly encapsulates what she's doing with that third sound. In the Philippines, there's this deeply ingrained cultural and artistic concept known as Hugot.
Ah, yes, Hugot. It's absolutely essential to understanding Filipino balladry.
It is. Hugot roughly translates to pulling out or drawing from. It's this profound act of pulling deep, raw, melancholic emotion straight from the depths of the soul and dragging it out into the light.
It's the reason why Filipino vocalists can deliver ballads that are just absolutely gut-wrenching.
Yes. And in Korean culture, there's a very similar complex emotional concept called han. It's a sort of deep-seated sorrow, resentment, and persistent hope born out of historical struggle and oppression.
The socio-historical parallels between the two concepts are striking. They both deal with finding beauty and resilience in deep emotional pain.
Right. So when Gwyn is mechanically pulling her English vocal placement back into the depths of her throat, accessing that rich, warm resonance, and pushing the Korean pronunciation forward into the bright mask of her face, she's literally, physically blending the mechanical execution of Filipino Hugot with the linguistic expression of Korean Han.
That is a brilliant synthesis.
She isn't just singing notes, she's building an acoustic sonic bridge between these two massive cultural concepts of emotion.
She's embedding her cultural DNA directly into the physical acoustics of the performance. The mechanics become the metaphor.
But mastering the mechanics of language, pitch, and placement is still only half the battle. How does she consistently translate all of that complex, calculated math into a soulful, compelling performance without looking like a robot calculating algorithms on stage?
That brings us to the architecture of her live performance, which is just a masterclass in psychological preparation. She has to bypass the analytical brain entirely when she's on stage.
This was highlighted when the hosts reacted to Gwyn's live busking-style performance of the song Jasmine. This was a collaboration with the famed Korean producer Code Kunst, and this specific performance actually won her the spin-off show Purple Love.
Johnny Cummings was practically vibrating when he analyzed this track. He couldn't get over her rhythmic pocket.
He really was. He pointed out her incredible musical swagger. He highlighted how she intentionally lands her melody a fraction of a second behind the downbeat.
She's mixing classic jazz phrasing with modern hip-hop sensibilities.
Let's unpack the concept of singing behind the beat, because I think it's a very sophisticated, often misunderstood rhythmic tool.
It absolutely is. The beat, or the grid, is the absolute mathematical center of the music. If you sing perfectly on the grid, perfectly locked to the metronome, it sounds rigid. It sounds synthesized, like a computer.
Right, there's no swing to it.
Exactly. If you sing slightly ahead of the beat, it creates a sense of urgency, anxiety, or forward momentum, which is great for punk or high-energy pop.
Like you're rushing to the finish line.
Yes. But if you intentionally delay your phrasing, dragging the melody just milliseconds behind the downbeat, it creates an immense sense of swagger, relaxation, and total confidence.
It's the Dilla feel.
The Dilla feel, exactly. It's a technique pioneered by jazz legends like Billie Holiday and heavily utilized in hip-hop by producers like Jay Dilla. It subconsciously tells the listener, I am in no rush, I am not chasing the music, I command this space, and the music waits for me.
And to pull that off in a foreign language while interacting with a live outdoor audience requires an insane level of comfort with the material. Gwyn shares her underlying philosophy on emotion and performance, and it completely subverts the romantic idea of the tortured, spontaneous artist who just wings it on pure feeling.
She's not winging it.
No. She says her goal is to practice the technical muscle memory until it is absolutely flawless, so that the raw emotion can naturally follow during the live show.
This is where Richard's vocal gym philosophy really shines. He explains that the goal of relentless practice is to consciously train the subconscious.
I want to dig into the neuroscience of that. What does it actually mean to consciously train the subconscious for a performance?
Okay, so think of the brain functioning in two distinct parts during a high-stress performance. The prefrontal cortex is your conscious analytical brain.
The part that does the math.
Right. It worries about hitting the 523 hertz C5 note. It worries about the Korean vowel placement, the timing of the beat, the lyrics. The limbic system, on the other hand, is the emotional, primal feeling center of the brain.
The part that actually connects with the audience.
Exactly. If your prefrontal cortex is panicking on stage, trying to remember lyrics or adjust placement, it acts like a dam, completely blocking the limbic system. True emotion cannot flow because the brain's bandwidth is consumed by survival and mechanics.
You can't feel the song if you're terrified of forgetting the words.
Precisely. By drilling the mechanics relentlessly in the practice room, you automate those tasks. You push them down into the basal ganglia of the subconscious. This turns off the analytical brain, opening the floodgates and allowing the limbic system to safely leak into the performance. The emotion becomes genuine because the brain is no longer terrified of making a technical mistake.
That's fascinating. To achieve that state of automated perfection, Gwyn goes to extremes. She mentions being deeply inspired by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh yeah, she idolizes him.
Because he's a true all-rounder. He writes, produces, acts, directs, and sings. He understands the entire holistic architecture of a story. Inspired by that approach, Gwyn's preparation is staggering.
It really is.
When she rehearses, she practices in the exact outfit she will wear on stage. She needs to know how a specific necklace swings when she moves. She tests to see if a single thread on a sleeve is itchy. She wants to know exactly how the heavy in-ear monitors will disrupt her physical balance.
She is systematically eliminating every single sensory surprise from the performance environment.
Exactly. It makes me think of astronauts training in those massive underwater neutral buoyancy pools. You put on the full bulky restrictive spacesuit and you spend hundreds of hours underwater meticulously simulating the exact environment of a spacewalk.
Because you do not want to be out in the vacuum of space, standing on the moon, trying to figure out how the locking mechanism on your glove works.
Right. You want your hands to do it automatically so your mind can be entirely focused on the mission itself.
That's a perfect analogy. Sensory anomalies pull you violently back into the conscious analytical brain. An itchy tag on a shirt forces the prefrontal cortex to activate and say, I am a person wearing an itchy shirt on a stage, instead of allowing the brain to be completely submerged in the emotional reality of the song. By eliminating the itchy thread, she protects the limbic system.
But I have to ask, isn't there a massive danger here?
What do you mean?
Can't you over-practice? If you drill the mechanics so intensely and eliminate every single surprise, doesn't the performance run the risk of becoming sterile? Doesn't eliminating the surprises eliminate the magic and spontaneity?
That's the constant tightrope walk of the professional musician. The risk of sterility is absolutely real. Over-rehearsing can lead to a hollow performance. But Gwyn avoids this trap because her practice isn't just about mindless repetition. It's about exploration within strictly defined boundaries.
Oh, the scatting story.
Yes, the scatting story perfectly illustrates this concept.
Gwyn tells this hilarious story about having to learn how to jazz scat for the Rebirth performance. She only had a week or two to figure it out, and she realized that scatting isn't just making random bop bop-doo-wop noises. It's strictly mathematically bound by the musical scale and the underlying chord progressions.
It's essentially composing a solo on the spot.
Right. So to drill these boundaries into her subconscious, she would literally walk around the hallways of her entertainment agency, going to get lunch or coffee, loudly scatting scales to herself. She said her coworkers were looking at her like she was, quote, mental or broken.
It's such a brilliant, vivid image of the creative process, and it proves that she isn't just rote memorizing a script. By scatting in the hallway in a non-performance environment, she's actively exploring, failing, and finding the rhythm groove organically.
She's testing the limits.
She's playing with the boundaries of the scale until the musical vocabulary becomes a fluent second language. She's giving herself the freedom to sound ridiculous and make mistakes in the hallway so she can sound spontaneous and flawless on stage.
She's acting as a mad scientist in the laboratory of the hallway. But this incredible discipline, this exacting work ethic that the Throga hosts compared to a 40-year-old industry veteran, it wasn't built overnight. It was forged over years, rooted in a very specific high-pressure environment.
The foundation of her work ethic is crucial to understanding her trajectory. You don't just manifest this kind of discipline at 21 without a massive runway.
Gwyn's background is just a staggering timeline of musical immersion. She started singing in church when she was 3 or 4 years old. By the time she was 5, living in Singapore, she was playing complex nursery rhymes on a tiny toy keyboard entirely by ear.
By ear at 5?
Yeah. She picked up guitar chords instantly at age 8. And by the time she was 10 years old, she was competing on Asia's Got Talent. She's 21 now, which means she already has over a decade of high-pressure, televised performance experience under her belt.
That timeline explains the sheer density of her skill set. She didn't just wake up one morning with an expensive tone and perfect subglottic pressure control.
And the Throga hosts contextualize this perfectly. They reference a past interview they did with an artist named Maddie J, who brought up a concept they called the cheat code of the Philippines.
Ah, the cheat code. It's a fascinating sociological observation.
The idea is that the Philippines is a country so absolutely overflowing with world-class vocal talent, a phenomenon they call the grocery store karaoke machine effect, where you might literally hear the best singer of your life casually belting out Whitney Houston in aisle 4 while buying milk, that the competition is impossibly dense.
Right. Everyone can sing.
So the theory goes, the best strategy, the ultimate career cheat code for a Filipino artist is to leave. Go compete in another country where the baseline of vocal talent isn't quite as terrifyingly high. But wait, is that fair to say? Isn't Korea notoriously cutthroat with its vocal training?
Well, it's cutthroat in a different way. The Korean Idol system is highly structured, focusing on dance, visuals, variety skills, and singing as a combined package. The Philippine vocal ecosystem is uniquely centered on pure, powerhouse vocal pedagogy and emotional delivery. When the baseline requirement for being considered just okay in your home country is astronomically high, the crucible of that environment forges an entirely different caliber of vocalist. By the time a Filipino vocalist steps onto an international stage, they've already survived a hyper-competitive vocal ecosystem. They're bringing a completely different standard of pure vocal excellence to the table.
And her training in that ecosystem was relentless. She spent 8 or 9 years training specifically with legendary Philippine vocal coach Jojo.
Coach Jojo has built a serious reputation for producing incredibly resilient vocalists.
Right, and we even see the interconnectedness of that community in the live chat during the Throga interview. Yumi Kapil, another incredible singer who also trained under Coach Jojo, was right there in the chat, dropping super chats and aggressively supporting Gwyn.
It shows this foundational network of resilience and mutual support that underpins these artists. They aren't just competing, they're elevating each other.
It explains why a 21-year-old is operating with such a mature, methodical mindset. She was built in an environment that demands both technical perfection and intense communal support.
But the cross-cultural leap is still challenging. Gwyn talks beautifully about the cultural adjustments of moving to Korea.
Oh yeah, the culture shock moments are so relatable.
She talks about deeply missing the Philippine beach, describing this profound physical need to just touch sand and feel the salt water after being landlocked in the concrete jungle of Seoul.
It's a grounding mechanism. When you're operating at such a high cerebral and artistic frequency, navigating new languages and intense television schedules, the somatic need for physical, elemental grounding, like literally touching sand, becomes very strong. It's the brain asking to return to a baseline sensory state.
She also had some hilarious culture shock moments regarding food. She talked about expecting a typical Filipino meal with maybe 1 or 2 small side dishes and being completely overwhelmed in Korea when a single order of rice arrived with boatloads of anchan, the array of small Korean side dishes.
It's an intimidating amount of food if you aren't ready for it.
And discovering naengmyeon, the savory cold noodle dish that initially baffled her because her brain was wired to expect noodles to be piping hot.
Those microshocks of culture, the food, the climate, the landscape, the language, they all contribute to the emotional reservoir she draws from when performing. They build character and adaptability.
And drawing from that reservoir has earned her an incredibly devoted fan base. Her fandom has adopted the name Doraji.
I love that name.
It's such a clever piece of cross-cultural wordplay. It combines her last name, Dorado, with the Korean word for the bellflower root, which is a traditional organic herbal medicine famous for soothing the throat and protecting vocal cords.
It's brilliant. It's a beautiful example of parasocial relationships in modern fandom. The fans are literally calling themselves the medicine that protects her voice.
The level of symbiotic, protective fandom that is really unique to the K-pop and Asian entertainment industry. They view themselves as an integral part of her vocal health and career longevity.
The dedication of the Doraji fandom was on full display during the Throga live stream in what was genuinely the funniest moment of the entire conversation, the extortion moment.
It was magnificent, shameless leverage by Richard and Johnny.
It really was. Richard and Johnny were queuing up the video to react to her performance of Jasmine, but they realized their YouTube channel was hovering just a few dozen subscribers away from the 350,000 mark.
So they literally held the video hostage.
They refused to hit play. They put a goofy distortion filter over Gwyn's face on the screen and told the 1,500 people watching live, "We are not playing this song until you push us over 350,000 subscribers."
And the chat went absolutely wild.
They mobilized instantly. Within minutes, the subscriber count ticked over the milestone. It was extortion, sure, but it was such a joyful communal moment. It highlighted the incredible community that surrounds Gwyn. The fans were so eager to see her praised that they happily played along with the ransom.
It speaks to the engaged, active nature of her audience. They aren't passive consumers just streaming music in the background. They're active participants in her journey and the journey of the creators who support her.
And the hosts, Richard and Johnny, clearly adore her. Johnny even proudly brought up a past moment where he was on a Filipino morning show and improvised a goofy song about balut, the Filipino street food.
He thought it was his crowning comedic songwriting achievement.
He really did. And Gwyn, on the spot, without missing a beat during the live stream, immediately sings a vastly superior, beautifully jazzy reharmonization of his silly lyrics, effectively stealing his songwriting credit live on air.
She completely obliterated his version. But again, it shows her brain is constantly working in music theory. She hears a simple, goofy melody, and her subconscious immediately maps out a complex jazz chord progression to elevate it. It's instinctive. It proves the hallway scatting practice works.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today on this deep dive.
We really have. It's a dense tapestry of art and science.
We've tracked Gwyn Dorado's journey from a young prodigy in the Philippines to a linguistic and vocal shapeshifter in South Korea. We've explored the complex vocal mechanics of the expensive tone and the physics of subglottic pressure.
We unpack the profound implications of her monophonic hearing and how her brain rewired itself to process pitch with laser focus, turning a sensory deficit into an auditory superpower.
We examine the extreme psychological architecture of her performances, drilling the mechanics relentlessly to liberate the limbic system, and the cultural cheat code that forged her resilience in an impossibly demanding environment.
It's a testament to the fact that effortlessness is always an illusion. The flawless performance you see under the stage lights is merely the tip of an incredibly deep iceberg of adaptation, repetition, physics, and sheer human will.
Which brings us to a fascinating threshold regarding the future of art and music creation. I want you, the listener, to think about this as we wrap up today's conversation. We live in an era right now where technology can synthesize perfection instantly.
Oh, absolutely.
Audio software can perfectly pitch correct any vocal flaw in real time. Artificial intelligence can generate a flawless instrumental arrangement in seconds. We can digitally render a performance that has zero mistakes, zero hesitation, and perfect tempo.
Absolute sterile perfection is now cheap, automated, and easily accessible to anyone with a laptop.
Exactly. But listening to the granular breakdown of Gwyn's journey, we see that her true artistry isn't born from that kind of sterile perfection. It's forged in the messy, physical realities of human limitation.
The struggle.
Yes, the struggle. It's the friction of learning to physically balance a forward Korean vowel against a backward English placement so you don't lose your voice. It's the profound neurological struggle of compensating for a deaf ear by hypersensitizing the other.
It's the obsessive, deeply human behavior of pacing an office hallway, scatting jazz scales until your coworkers think you've lost your mind, just to find the pocket of a rhythm.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with. In the near future of music, when perfection is fully automated by machines and available to absolutely everyone, will our physical flaws, our anatomical limitations, and the obsessive, uniquely human ways we battle to overcome them become the only unfakeable signature of true art?
Is the struggle the only thing we can't synthesize? If we can fake perfection, then perhaps the friction of imperfection becomes the ultimate luxury.
I love that. The friction is the luxury. When you look at that flawless 21-year-old on stage commanding the room, remember? The power isn't in the perfection. The power is the massive, idling engine of human adaptation hiding just beneath the surface. Keep the lid on that thought until next time.